All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We are recording and we are also live on YouTube. We will send you a copy of the recording automatically. And we really appreciate your time being here today to talk about improving your conflict competence. This is a really tough topic for a lot of people. I don't think that in the 20 plus years that I've been career coaching, I've ever had anyone say, I love conflict. So just by way of quick introduction, I'm Hallie Crawford. I'm a certified career coach, speaker, and author. I've been coaching and training since 2002, and I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a graduate degree from the University of Illinois. And we're going to try to give you as much complimentary advice as we can today in the approximately 30 minutes that we have together. And I want to recommend upfront, based on where you are with dealing with conflict and improving how you manage it, pick one action step that makes the most sense for you and your situation, that resonates the most for you based on your personality type, etc. You can always revisit the recording later to pick up on the additional tips that we give as we progress through our time today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Why is this such an important topic? We have a lot of people register for our webinars for this particular topic because conflicts in the workplace are a big deal. They impact us emotionally, mentally, and they impact our ability to be successful and effective in our work, as well as feel fulfilled and enjoying our work. And if you look at this next slide here, workplace conflict statistics are pretty intense if you look at this. So first of all, at the top left, 60 to 80%, give or take, of difficulties in organizations. I think a lot of us might assume that it's because people they don't know what they're doing. Maybe they lack the skill set, etc. But it's actually due to less than optimal relationships between employees, not because of deficits in either someone's skill set or their motivation. 84% of workers, and we completely agree with this because we hear about this a lot from our clients, they have had at least one toxic coworker, boss, or just toxic work environment. So we completely understand if that's the case for you. And unfortunately, please note that you're not alone. This does happen a lot, unfortunately. And the thing that I thought when I first started presenting on this topic a long time ago that I was really surprised by was that a typical manager spends between 25 and 40% of their time dealing with workplace issues, which is a lot of time. And honestly, I think is part of why some of our clients will tell us flat out, I don't want to be a manager. And it's okay if that's the case for you. So this is such an important topic for so many different reasons. It causes a lot of stress for people. Enjoy it, and some people it's harder on them. And the effects of how much the workplace has changed over time during and post-COVID, I think has increased in some cases the types of difficulties that people have encountered in the workplace, and in some cases creates more conflict. So people sometimes, not all the time, that work from home might feel like they've got fewer boundaries. They might be a little bit more stressed. In some cases, people feel a little bit more disconnected and maybe less motivated. And sometimes people don't know how to lead effectively. So if you've got maybe a great manager or boss, but if you're working remotely, some people are great at leading remotely and some people have trouble with it. So this is also why it's such an important topic. And then finally, work environment is a make or break for our career satisfaction and success. If you look at our ideal career model that we use with our clients to help them find the right job, brand themselves effectively, but also understand what may be not going well at their current job, work environment is a make or break. It's a big deal. So being in the right work environment and a good positive culture is huge for not just your effectiveness and success, but also your fulfillment and satisfaction. So let's talk about or go over what we're going to discuss today. Our agenda up until 12:30 is going to be talking about some coaching skills and agreements that we would recommend you make in order to improve how you handle conflict between your coworkers, also with your bosses too. We'll talk about 3 foundational tools that will help you with this. And as a reminder, as we said earlier, the recording will be emailed to you automatically. So just keep an eye out for that in your email. So one of the first things that we would suggest that you consider as a first action step is to think about, okay, what are your greatest challenges as it relates to conflict management? Do you fall under the category on this slide of, I just completely avoid it because it makes me really nervous? Do I fall under the category of, I don't always know exactly what to say, so maybe as a result I avoid it, or I don't feel like I handle it well? Is one of your challenges office politics or something else? So one of the first things we would recommend that you do, honestly, is to write down what your biggest challenge is. What do you think gets in your way the most? Because that's where you know that you need to focus your energy, identify what holds you back, because that's what you need to tackle first. And also notice the trends in when conflicts are coming up with you and in the workplace. Does it typically happen with a certain person? Is it typically when you're working on a specific project or with a certain client? So noticing those themes and those trends can actually be a really big deal, because you'll start to see, okay, these are the areas where I really need to focus and what happens to me in order to better prepare for those meetings or those conversations, for example. And in order to manage relationships and conflict more effectively, the key important things that need to be present in your workplace or within your relationships are things like the items listed on this next slide. A foundation of trust between your coworkers, employees, and your boss, at least to a certain extent. Empathy and understanding, that you express that for others and they do so for you. Honesty, that you're able to be upfront and direct with each other in the right, constructive, positive way. And that there's an effective feedback loop in place in order for you all to disagree sometimes or give each other feedback when it's needed. And then finally, the tools that we're going to be discussing today too will help you also develop a better foundation of effective listening, which, by the way, if you look at all of these are all very intertwined. So for example, when you're a more effective listener, you're going to be demonstrating empathy and understanding to another person more effectively than you would otherwise. So they're all very intertwined. So the 3 foundational tools that we want to talk about today and share with you are things like creating an agreement, more empathetic listening. And I know some of you might feel like, oh, I am a good listener. I've heard about active listening ad nauseum. I get that. But we're going to discuss a little bit different way of thinking about it today. And then this idea or concept of leveraging the right types of questions to ask people in order to be more effective, manage the conflict with them, more understanding, and also move towards a resolution faster as well. So let's talk about the first one. And these are tools that we give to our clients all the time when we're working with them. So first of all, creating some kind of agreement, or at the very least, having a conversation about the work that you do, or with the people that you work with, about how you do the work, I should say, can be incredibly helpful to help you avoid conflict in the first place and mitigate it and manage it when it does happen. So some of these agreements can be formal or informal. They can be written or just discussed over time. You don't have to have one full conversation sitting down talking about everything. But if you can talk a little bit more about how you work together, not just doing the work all day long, and establish some guidelines for how you communicate and how you can communicate effectively, what tasks you're supposed to be performing, the meetings that you're having, what's the most frequent way that you should meet, or what should your meeting schedule be? How often? How long should those meetings be? What should you guys be discussing? Roles that you play in the project to make sure that each person has role clarity, because sometimes conflicts arise when people aren't totally clear about their role and they're overstepping. Making an agreement in advance or during the course of a working relationship for how to handle your tasks properly, how to handle conflict, disagreements, and feedback, whether you prefer to email first or they do so they can sit with it for a minute and then have a conversation. Is it better to do it over the phone? Is it better to do it in person? When you have this type of conversation with someone, how can we work together more effectively? How can we get through this issue or this difficulty we're having in a more collaborative way? Ask them their opinion first to show empathy and understanding. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them all the time, but ask them their opinion. And you let them talk and explain maybe where they're coming from, etc. And during the course of this possibly touchy conversation, really attend to your body language, making sure that you're making eye contact with them. You're showing understanding by nodding, leaning forward to listen, being engaged in the conversation. I say hands in your lap here on the right-hand side only because some people will wave their hands around a little bit more if they get nervous, and you want to make sure that you're being calm during the course of your conversation. So creating an agreement like this, and I would say that everybody's agreement needs to be a little bit different based on the situation that they're in, the people that you're working with and talking to. And this is where, through coaching, we help our clients get more specific with the details here about what you need to be agreeing to and how to handle people that may not be being as productive in their feedback, et cetera, as they possibly could be. But the reason why we like having these types of conversations, and there's this whole concept of creating a team charter as well, that we teach our clients about too, is that it improves your professional relationships over time. In an ideal world, because number one, on the right-hand side of the slide, it ideally empowers each person to take responsibility. If you'll notice those questions I mentioned before, it's asking them their opinion and forcing them to say, okay, here are some ideas for how we can do this. It doesn't allow for a no answer. It also establishes those clear boundaries that might be needed for a safe space to have these types of touchy conversations. So you're not barging in, they're not barging in either, and you're discussing how can we deal with this effectively when I'm frustrated or you're frustrated with me. And it creates ground rules to follow for clarity over time. We recommend, by the way, that you periodically, update your team charter or your agreement with someone as needs and situations change. And we've got a model for a team charter that we use and give to our clients that has 8 components, 8 different things that you want to incorporate into this agreement. Let's talk next about tool number 2, and this is the concept of empathetic listening. I always laugh at this image because I think I look like I'm listening a little too intently because my eyes are a little intense. But the idea here is that you want to be really present with the person as much as possible. So especially in touchy situations, you want to gut check first before you even introduce the conversation. Is this the right time, situation, or location to discuss this, or should I wait till I'm a little bit calmer, or maybe they are? We already talked about number 2 in the middle, telling them in advance and asking that permission. We invite you, or would recommend that you ask questions first. How do you feel about this? Is there anything in particular that's the most frustrating for you that I could do differently? Then discuss and share your opinion. Remember that when we're talking about active listening and inviting people to share their opinion, that doesn't inherently mean that we have to agree with them or that we do, but we're giving them that respect of listening to and finding out what's going on for them as well. So with tool number 2 and empathetic listening, as we all know, everything in the workplace involves communication. What we wear and our attire communicates our brand and about who we are. And two-way communication about everything, for the most part. I know sometimes if you're a boss and you just need to tell someone this is how this needs to be done, that's a different situation. But as much as possible, having this two-way communication can help mitigate or avoid conflict. And what we find is, even though our clients might say, yeah, I know all about listening, I've heard it before, not everyone actually really naturally knows how to truly listen, express empathy, and show understanding. And remember, as we've said, understanding doesn't mean agreement, but showing understanding for human beings makes them feel heard. It's a big deal, and it can calm down and tone down a conflict. So there's 3 levels of listening that we train our clients on. Level 1 is internal listening. It's listening to our own inner voice. And we have to listen to this. I'm hungry. This meeting is boring. Why are we meeting again? We have to practice self-care. But what we want to pay attention to is we want to not be so much in level 1 listening, even to the point where we're trying to think of what we're going to say next versus really listening to the other person. We want to get over there in level 2, where it's really listening to the other person, focus listening, and listening to each word that they're saying, but also their nonverbals. What are they not saying, or saying something different with their nonverbals, and the nuances in the conversation. And then the 3rd level of listening is what we call global listening. And this is paying attention to the energy between the two of you, the tone, the mood of your relationship, what's going on right now, the tone of the conversation. And what we invite you to do, as much as possible, we're not asking for perfection here 100% of the time, is to really try to be quiet sometimes. Like, let it be okay for there to be some quiet space and quiet time for you to think, for them to think. Slow yourself down when you're talking. Don't step over things that they've said to you. And in some cases, it may be okay to interrupt them and say, ooh, hold on one second. Do you mind if we revisit that for just a moment? I feel like that might be important. Could you repeat what you just said, just so I make sure I'm clear? So don't rush through conversations. I know that we are busy during the course of our day, and we have jobs that we have to get done. I get that. And this is, again, why we're not expecting perfection, and this is all the time. But if you say to yourself as one action item, I'm going to do a better job every single day of really actively listening to one person every day and noticing the difference in how that conversation goes and what comes out of it, it can make a huge difference in that relationship between the two of you. And one active listening exercise that we will give to our clients is twofold here, listed on this slide. Number 1, have a close friend or family member tell you about a problem that they're struggling with. And the first time that you practice this, you're only allowed to paraphrase back what they say. You can't ask any questions. You can't give any advice. And this may sound easy, but it's actually pretty hard to do. When we give live workshops on this, you can see people kind of struggling to hold themselves back. And the second time you do this, we would recommend that you can ask questions in that part of the conversation or separate conversation, but you're not still allowed to give advice. And again, as human beings, I think naturally we want to help, which I think is fantastic. So we naturally want to dive in and give advice and help people out. And not giving advice, though, and really giving that time to express themselves, to explore like whatever may be going on for them, to figure out a solution on their own can be incredibly powerful. This is one of the tools we use with our clients too. It's the 4 needs of followers from the Gallup organization. We love using this with our clients to help them understand how to improve their work relationships and also manage around conflict. And in some cases, understanding what may be missing from each of these components in some of your relationships with people can give you some clues to what needs to change and how to manage that conflict in a better way. So please feel free to reach out to us to learn about our coaching services. We always offer a free consult to discuss our options and if it would be a good fit for you. We do have a Black Friday sale coming up. It's happening tomorrow because it's already that time of year. We will send out an email about that tomorrow. So keep an eye on your inbox. It's $100 off of our coaching packages, our bundles, as well as our resume writing packages as well. And I just put, you can use the QR code here, but I also put a link to schedule a consult with us inside of the chat box as well. I'd be happy to talk with you about our services further. We love what we do. Let's talk about our third and last tool for today. And this is this idea of leveraging curiosity to improve your work relationships and manage and deal with conflict even in the moment. So asking questions of people versus always giving our opinion, and a certain type of question can help improve your relationships enormously. So if you look at the right-hand side of this next slide, it's important during a conflict, as much as we possibly can, especially at the beginning, to try to be curious at the outset versus judgmental, frustrated, or angry, because being curious instead, at least at the beginning, can help diffuse a conflict. And as we all know, if we go into a conversation or a conflict angry, it's usually not going to go as well. And those are times when you want to sleep on something overnight, then have a conversation. So again, we already said on the right-hand side of this slide, we talked about this idea of asking permission before sharing. But what we like to teach people to do is to leverage this idea of powerful questions in order to show understanding and empathy, but also get a sense of what's going on with the other person. In some cases, it might let them vent, get it off their chest, then they can be more productive. But powerful questions, bottom line, are open-ended questions. They're kind of childlike in a way, in a good way for this situation. There's no judgment in them. And in some cases, it can allow the other person to vent, explain their side, identify a solution, or think something through, and the two of you can come up with a solution together. And the bottom line with powerful questions is they do not allow for yes or no answers. So if you take a look at the left-hand side of the slide, how can we improve our professional relationship? This is not a yes or no response. And it also assumes a positive outcome. So the 2 rules about powerful questions is assumes positive outcome, not yes or no. That's why we like them so much. So we realize, if you look at this next slide, that there are plenty of times when you need to offer your opinion and make decisions and maybe make a decision for them. But you can start out conversations by really listening, and as much as you possibly can, when it's not a rush to make a decision right away, etc., incorporate this active listening exercise, the use of powerful questions, leveraging these types of agreements in order to manage your relationships more effectively. And by the way, these are things that you can use with people that you've worked with for a long time. They don't always have to be implemented at the very start of a work relationship. It's great when you have that situation, but doesn't always have to be that way. Powerful questions can be either information gathering or curious, where you're just trying to get information from the person, versus curious questions are forcing them to think a little bit more and maybe identify a solution, come to a decision together. And as part of curiosity, Keep in mind, especially when you're having a conflict-ridden situation or conversation, that the effective assertive communication formula in the middle of the slide here is always about showing understanding first. Then you state the fact, then you go to the resolution piece. So the showing understanding is just so critical to getting through not just difficult conversations, but trying to manage conflict. And we teach our clients about a lot of emotional intelligence skills as well. There are 4 elements to work on as it relates to emotional intelligence. And we work on each one with our clients depending on which one they need to improve the most. And one of the books that we recommend to people is this one, listed on this next slide, from Daniel Goleman, who's considered the father of emotional intelligence. Working with emotional intelligence can be a good starting point for you to start thinking about, how can I deal with and improve my ability to manage conflicts? So we would love it if you would write down right now, and please feel free to share in the chat box before we go in the next minute, one action step that you will take in the next week or 2, given that we've got holidays coming up. I get that. It could be, I'm going to think about creating an agreement and see what areas I might need to focus on based on the 4 needs of followers or something else. It could be, I'm going to practice with some powerful questions. Your second step would be to schedule a consult with us. We would be happy to help you and find out if coaching makes sense for you at this point in your journey. And then your third step, especially in the new year, is to succeed in handling your conflict more effectively. Now, we're not looking for perfection here. Remember, conflicts are just a natural part of life, a natural part of the workplace. So we are not saying that this is going to help avoid it every single second of the day and all of the time. But these tools will help you avoid them in some cases. And if nothing else, help you better manage them much more proactively than you possibly have in the past. Thank you so much for your time to everyone. We hope that this complimentary advice was helpful for you as a starting point. As we said, look out for the recording in your email, and you'll be directed either to our YouTube site or you will get it as a